Second place, ACCA Awards. It's Tuesday, August 11th. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blancolirio channel, and we learn a lot about aviation on this channel, and we learn a lot about aviation safety by studying the mishaps of others. But it's one thing to talk about aviation safety. It's another thing altogether to actually do something. And who better to actually do something about aviation safety than the most persistent guy in general aviation today and on YouTube, Dan Gryder from Atlanta, Georgia. You've seen Dan Gryder already on Flight Chops and Finer Points and Aviation 101, and here on this channel, a ball full of energy. Dan Gryder's got a special message he wants to share with us today regarding AQP Advanced Qualification Program and expand his AQP philosophy into the Part 135 world, and that gray area where Part 91 and Part 135 meets with light or small jet aircraft, citations, that sort of aircraft, and twin engine turboprop aircraft, complex high-speed aircraft. Why? The accident safety record speaks for itself, and they now have an insurance crisis in the Part 135 world. Dan's going to explain more on that here. On this channel, we frequently talk about the different levels of aviation safety regarding, from a regulation standpoint, Part 91, General Aviation, Part 135, Charter or for hire, and Part 121, Airlines. Well, one of the things that makes aviation safety records so different among these different levels of regulation is not necessarily the level of regulation itself, but it's a difference in training. And what is the revolutionary new training that's allowed Part 121 operators to have a virtually zero fatality rate for many, many years here in the United States? One of the biggest changes was AQP, Advanced Qualification Program. This is where a group of pilots and industry leaders got together and had to basically bypass the FAA or get the FAA to agree to some extent to allow additional training in the training program. In the Air Force, we had an old saying: if you were at the bottom of the class, you were just scraping by, you'd tell your instructors, hey, if the men's weren't good enough, they wouldn't be the men's, right? Well, FAA training requirements just trains a pilot to the bare minimums. There's a whole nother level of training that can be accomplished that can create a much more well-rounded pilot. And what AQP allows is to take real-world accidents, real-world incident data, real-world issues that are going out there, and develop a training scenario around those situations. Let's see what Dan Gryder has to say about this for the Part 135 world.
Thank you, Juan Brown, Blancolirio, and you got a great channel. Juan, let me give you my personal endorsement, and you folks out there watching YouTube via Patreon, if you can support Juan and his efforts. He and I occasionally team up together a little bit on some of this airplane and accident stuff. Today, I've been invited to talk a little bit via the Juan Brown Blancolirio channel. Hard to say, it's a tongue twister, but we're talking about the FAA NTSB accident report. Just came out 2 days ago. Today is August 6th when we're filming this. August 4, the NTSB data came out on the Dallas Addison King Air 350 crash via a docket that came out. I've got some of that information here. We're going to talk kind of quick and go through it, but the concept here today is important. This concept is really important because we're at a crux in aviation. Not just in general aviation, we're at a real turning point in corporate aviation, 135, and the whole system that makes everything work in aviation revolves around banking and insurance. And right now there's a true banking crisis. There's even more of an insurance crisis going on. Why? It's because of the incredible, senseless, needless hull losses that have occurred, especially in the turbine and owner-flown markets. General aviation has been horrible and has not improved over the last several years. It's not like a hurricane where we don't have any control. The hurricane's going to hit where the hurricane's going to hit. In general aviation and in aviation, We have the opportunity and the ability to actually change history and to get better and to stop crashing airplanes. The problem right now is in the 135 market, there's this thing called a broker network. These 135 operators are screaming because of cost of premium increase. Increase in premium is unfortunate, and they're willing to take that. The real problem is loss of liability limits. So a carrier that used to have $100 million liability limit, these insurance carriers are now dropping those way down. The broker market often requires $100 million smooth liability limit, and of the three things that an insurance carrier can do, they can raise your premium, they can increase your deductible, or they can reduce this liability limit. The insurance companies for some of these turbine operators are simply dropping the liability limits way down, which throws most of these operators out of the contention. A lot of these 135 operators for turboprops and jets, they're relying on the broker market to be able to bid these trips and fly them. In other words, a local 135 operator that has some airplanes at your airport, probably less than 50% of the trips come from the local environment. The other 50% are coming from the internet and from the brokers. What does the broker require? Needs a certificate of insurance with $100 million in liability limits. As soon as these carriers start dropping that down, 50% of that business for them is gone. So they have a real problem. They're about to go out of business. If we don't take this and address it now, in the next 12 and 24 months, you're going to see many operators simply going out of business because those term limits were not offered because of our accident. Is our solution in raising premiums? No. The solution is not in raising deductible. The solution is not in lowering liability limits. Our solution lies in stop crashing our airplanes. We have got to find a way to stop crashing our airplanes. So I'm going to back up and talk about private pilot, general aviation, AQP. AQP is a subject that I've been working on for several years, and I originally started working on this for the general aviation light airplane, owner flown, little single engine piston twin airplanes, and you might have seen this on both Flight Shop's YouTube channel and Aviation 101, where I've done some extensive video work. We actually built an entire 40-page PDF document now available on each channel for free in PDF form. It simply shows you what the areas are that are not on your private pilot ACS check ride. In other words, to get a private pilot's license, you're doing the maneuvers that are on the private pilot ACS, but you're not doing the maneuvers that I have contained in my AQP. What is AQP? Well, for the airlines, AQP is an advanced qualification program. It's maneuvers that the airlines made that they made up. They manufactured some maneuvers in order to increase their safety. So what did we do for general aviation? Via Flight Shops, and you can watch those videos, and Josh Flowers, Aviation 101, we built the maneuvers with a 40-page explanation page so that you can take your maneuvers to your CFI, find the ones that are pertinent to you, check off your boxes, and find which ones that you want to practice and be good at, and then here's a couple insurance pages that you can voluntarily create for your insurance company and self-sign off the recurrent maneuvers that you did for general aviation AQP. It's maneuvers above and beyond private pilot or commercial pilot ACS material that you normally use for that. The accident data. If you look at this accident data, and I'm showing a graphic of it right now online, the airlines have a stellar, I mean, we're talking zero goose egg rate for fatal accidents in the airlines in the 121 world is zero. It's because of AQP. It's a special secret sauce that they developed that works perfect for them, and it's a secret deal. Now, the accidents that we want to talk about that just came to light here, I'm going to read you. There's an advisory circular here. I'm going to read you the nuts and bolts of this. This is a 160-page advisory circular. The subject, Advanced Qualification Program. This is from the FAA. It's number 120-54A. It basically says AQP is a systematic methodology for developing the content of training programs. Well, there's some new information. This is developing content for training programs. It was given to the airlines and it worked. It worked perfect. AQP totally solved their problems. This advisory circular that the FAA wrote says in 1-3, it says participation is voluntary. An airline doesn't have to do it, but if an airline wants to stay in business, they adopted this, they went with it, and it worked. Part B employs innovative training and qualifications concept with regulatory flexibility to tailor training to individual company circumstances. Now here's some information. You can tailor your training to your own circumstances to increase safety. That's the concept of AQP. I've built it already for general aviation. It's already done. It's available. It's free. What I'm wanting to know is if we should work on building this for the turbine 135 owner-flown corporate world. We can build the same thing. I think we can do it. So here's the advisory circular and their content under their purpose. So I already wrote my own. They said that you can't write your own advisory circular, but I already did. I wrote my own advisory circular, and it's going in my new document, my AQP-V. V stands for voluntary. This is AQP-V, and I've already started on it for this particular segment to solve the problem that we're about to have. We're having the problem right now. It's getting worse by the day. If you're a turbine operator of any kind, increased premiums is not going to be your problem. This loss of liability insurance is going to be your downfall, and you're going to be either forced to go out of business or sell your airplane if we don't start on this right now. So here's my purpose. You can read this on screen while I'm reading it. This document provides owner-operator, corporate flight department, owner-flown, or 135 operator guidance for the voluntary adoption of FAA Part 121 style proven advanced qualification program concepts without the need for FAA approval. We don't need the FAA to approve this. We could just do it, and I'm going to show you how. AQP-V is a voluntary systematic methodology for development of content of training programs for the FAA Part 91, 125, and 135 pilot or operator. It replaces programmed hours and maneuvers specified by the ACS or PTS with proficiency-based training, additional specified maneuvers not found in the PTS or the ACS, and evaluation standards derived from detailed fatal accident loss scenarios. Where did I get these maneuvers that I made up? I didn't make them up. I got these maneuvers from the blood and crashed metal of crashed airplanes. Every time an airplane crashes and people die, I've got a new maneuver that I made up in my AQP-V. Here's the bottom line on this. AQP-V for FAA Part 91, 125, and 135 operators simply defines the concepts that the FAA defines these concepts. The concept is that the FAA can determine minimum standards, but they cannot limit the instruction, training, and checking of additional non-FAA concepts and maneuvers. In other words, the FAA can define the minimums of what you need. They cannot prohibit you from doing extra. And that's what we need to do proactively on our own on a volunteer basis to get ahead of this and start doing the maneuvers. I've got 20 of them in here, 20 new maneuvers that you have never heard of. Now, next question is, what are the maneuvers? I'm not going to give you all 20, but I'm going to give you 3 of them. I'm going to give you 2 of them right now. First of all, I'm going to give you maneuver number 3, which is the engine failure after liftoff. And if you go to SimiFlight or CAE or flight safety in a turbine airplane or a jet, they're going to give you an engine failure at V1 when your mains and your nose gear are still on the runway. That is the maneuver. They never thought about failing the engine at any other place. The Addison King Air crash from the docket. Where did this guy get his engine failure? He got his at 100 after his pitch was already established at 10 degrees nose up. Well, what's your normal engine failure procedure in a King Air when you're rolling down the runway, or a jet or a Lear? You rotate up to 8 degrees by pulling aft. That's the only thing he's ever been trained. His engine failure occurred after liftoff. He was already at 10 degrees. What did he do? He pulled another 5 degrees like he was taught. He pulled the nose aft up to 15 degrees nose up after his left engine failed. What caused the engine failure? I really don't care. It's throttle migration, fuel controller unit, a broke oil line, a broke P line, a broke something. Something caused loss of thrust. I don't know if it's a rollback, catastrophic loss. Who knows? Who cares? The pilot should have been able to fly out of that, no problem. He needed to know in that instance to lower the nose, not raise the nose. Had he ever been trained on it? No, he had never been trained on it. And that's because his maneuvers are only in the FAA, PTS, and ACS. That maneuver that he got that day is not in FAA curriculum. Guess what? It's in mine. It's number 3 in mine. In my AQP-V book that's already getting very full on my notes, mine is in there. That's number 3. Another example, the Earnhardt crash. This docket just came out as well. Day VFR stabilized approach. Flight safety, CAE, semi-flight will always tell you they want you to fly a stabilized approach. Problem is they don't tell you what it is. A stabilized approach in the airlines under AQP is an AQP maneuver. It's passable, it's failable. If you don't know what the AQP maneuver is and know what the parameters are and be able to do it, you're not going to pass the AQP check ride. VFR at 500 feet minimum, you got to be fully configured, checklist complete, on speed, landing on center line in the touchdown zone, not at flight idle, and don't have the speed brakes out. These guys broke all the rules, and I believe the reason is because they were never trained or checked. No one ever gave them that maneuver as a pass-fail maneuver. It's not in your FAA PTS. It's not in your flight safety curriculum. Guess what? It's item number 6 of 20 in Dan's AQP-V. That is a voluntary maneuver that you can do all by yourself. So that's the concept on what we're doing. This insurance thing, I've got the turbine-powered application for insurance for the King Air that crashed in Dallas. This is all available on the NTSB website. Here's the insured value, $4,800,000 hull value. What did this guy do? He goes and on the insurance application it says, please provide a copy of latest manufacturer school completion certificate for each pilot. He's got to produce a certificate in order for his insurance to be good. He wants to insure $4.8 million of hull value and $50 million in liability limits. The insurance company took this completion certificate and said, yes, your insurance is effective based on this completion certificate. What did these guys do that gave him this completion certificate? They did the maneuvers in the PTS. Did the maneuvers that he was trained on for his recurrent training have anything to do what I have in here for the maneuver that he actually suffered that day? They did not. He had a maneuver that this company that did his recurrent training did not help him with. They weren't on there. Now, it's not their fault. They're only doing the FAA minimum. That's all they're required to do. They're not at fault for giving him a recurrent based on FAA material. We, as a community and as a nation, we are at fault for not thinking ahead of what the maneuvers are out there that can kill us and not fixing this. Here's the maneuvers that he got. Here they are. Pre-flight inspection, taxi, power plant checks, normal takeoff, normal landing from an ILS, crosswind landing. Do those sound like the maneuvers that the guy got that day? His left engine failure at 100 feet with the nose already at 10 and 11 degrees nose up. Is that maneuver on here? It is not. That fully explains why he did not survive it. He had never seen it before. Lots of other problems with that crash, but the main problem with all of these crashes is that you are training and giving people recurrent training on the basis of FAA minimums. Mother Nature and karma is giving you the maximums, and we as a community are not ready for it. Here's the article that King Air guy wrote, this is also in the document, his procedure for engine failure in a King Air. Power, max available, airspeed, maintain, landing gear up, propeller lever, feather, airspeed, maintain, flaps up. This is right out of the King Air manual. This is telling you that when you lose an engine on a King Air to maintain airspeed, which is true, what they don't tell you is that you have to go to the correct pitch. Lowering the nose to the correct pitch is going to yield the correct airspeed. Pitch plus power equals airspeed. You can't pitch for an airspeed, you have to pitch for a pitch that's going to work for your airplane. Just like when you board an airplane, they tell you to keep in mind that the nearest exit may be behind you. I say keep in mind after takeoff, the correct pitch may be below you. You don't need to raise the nose up to the correct pitch. You may have to lower the nose down to the correct pitch. That's a maneuver that we have to know about, train, and be ready for in AQP voluntary, so that insurance companies will recognize that we're proactive, we understand this. Let's train all 20 of these. Let's get you up to speed on ground school. I want to know in the comments section if what I have said here makes any sense at all. I don't have to finish building this. I've started on it. I already built the one for GA. I'm fully willing, ready, and able to build the turbine one for these. It'll be ground school, internet based. You can take some modules, and then you can go to Simuflight, CAE, your normal training vendor, and you simply hand them the additional voluntary maneuvers that says, I want my guys checked on these additional maneuvers as well. It's free. There's no extra charge. Your normal guys can give you the normal training on it. They're not that hard of maneuvers. Your pilots just have to know about them and be ready for it. Tell me in the comment section. This is where you get to vote. This is the subject. If we don't fix this now, if we don't do voluntary AQP for the turbine world, there's going to be a drastic reduction in the turbine world. There's going to be a drastic reduction in liability limits. Your premiums are going to continue to go out of sight. Our solution is not in raising premiums. Our solution is in reducing accidents. Let's reduce ridiculous, senseless, fatal accidents, and let's do it via training. Let's learn about this stuff, practice it, and get good at it so that we don't die out there. That's all it is. I'm listening. If you write a comment, I promise you I'll read it. So is the rest of the industry. If you leave a comment, tell me your name, your qualifications, and whatever comment that you got. AQP-V. I want to know, is this something that you want us to work on? Juan Brown, back to you.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Lots of information to consider. Now, to be fair to the pilot of the King Air, he did, in fact, receive engine failure training in the simulator, but it was the same old engine failure training scenario that he got year after year, and the engine failure that he actually received in the second segment of the climb was surprising and different than the scenario that he practices every year in the simulator. That's the point Dan's trying to make. And breaking news, NetJets is one of the first Part 135 operators that's going to start using AQP style training in their Part 135 simulator training program. So let's hear what you think in the comment sections below, especially those of you operating in the Part 135 world or that are operating these type of aircraft in Part 90 under Part 91. Thanks again so much for your support of this channel here and on Patreon and PayPal. See you here.